Hello, my name is Sister Niamh Galvin. I'm a Dominican contemplative nun in Siena Monastery in Drogheda in Ireland, so not Italy, Ireland. I'm here to wish you a happy Christmas and to talk a little bit about Jesus, who is the light of the world and the star of the world and the whole reason for our existence. I wish you a very happy Christmas from all the sisters in the community with me here, to know and to assure you that we are praying for everyone, that the Lord Jesus, who was born for us at this time of year, may touch your hearts and help you somehow to know that He is all that you could possibly want if you have the courage to search for Him. Christmas is a wonderful time of year, especially for families and children, especially for children. And for women and for the world, for people who are suffering and people who are filled with joy and people who have lost a sense of meaning in their lives, or for people who don't realise that their lives have meaning and value. And the nuns here in Siena and nuns all over the world, our mission and our life is to pray that this Jesus who has been born will reach the whole world as He wants to, through us and through our prayer, and to everybody, even those who have never heard of Him. In today's world, at least the Western world that I'm familiar with, you find that at this time of year there are lots of lights and trees and decorations and people coming together to celebrate, share presents and wish each other a Merry Christmas. And it's a wonderful thing to do, but sometimes, certainly for us as nuns here, for people to know why we celebrate Christmas is tremendously important, because it doesn't have any meaning if Jesus isn't the reason for it. I mean, over 2,000 years ago, there was no such thing as Christmas. Imagine, no such thing as Christmas. And all of a sudden, on a lonely night, in a very poor part of the world, where people were just going about their business, something tremendous and wonderful and miraculous happened that changed the whole course of history. It brought all that had come before it to this point in history and all that was to follow after, all centred around this one moment when this young girl gave birth to a baby that looked like any other baby and held Him in her arms and knew who He was. And the silence in the world, or the business of the world, it carried on, and nobody knew anything that was going to happen or anything that had happened. It wasn't a night different to any other night, and yet it changed the whole course of history. When I was thinking about Christmas, just to think of humanity and the state of the world as it is at the moment, there's so much poverty and there's so much human trafficking going on, and as the world becomes more of an economically motivated place, the people who are making the world to be what it is are forgetting that their purpose in life isn't to make the world more financially viable. It's to discover that their lives are a gift and that they have come into the world to make it a better place for all humanity, so that people will know who they are. I always find that the Catholic faith, or certainly the faith that I profess, which is Catholic faith, it's a wonderful gift, because it answers a whole load of questions that we have about who we are and where we're from and why we're here and what we're for, and what the value that life has when you see so many people who think that it's meaningless when it isn't. And we hear so much of suicide in the world now, and people with guns going into schools, and just without any thought or without any sense, just as if we're flies or insects or creatures that have no intelligence or no ability to feel pain or love or any of that. And Jesus came into the world to look on us and to love us, so that we would know that we are precious in the sight of God. He came to make God accessible. God is accessible now because of Jesus, who is God, but I mean, on the morning that he was born, he was a helpless baby who cried, who hungered, and who needed his mother. Just like any of us. I mean, when we're born in the mess of birth, and he was born in the same mess. I think in this world, and you know, the secular world that we're living in now, where Christianity and a lot of faiths are not welcome, it's interesting that when we don't have God, we're still seeking something to put our trust in, or something to believe in, or something to hope for or live for. And a lot of us seek, or we think that we can find that by attaching ourselves to people on the television, or famous people, or stars of the world, you know, who have their lives made. They have everything they've ever hoped for and fulfilled all their dreams and all these riches and all this beauty. And at the end of the day, what we see in these people probably isn't the truth. Do you know, it's probably a face that they present to us so that we may think we know them. But these stars of the people that we love and we idolize so much, they have everything, and yet they don't actually know who we are. The star that I want is somebody that I can relate to, that I can get in touch with, and that is actually interested that I exist. Do you know, all these famous people who have all this money and who are living in houses that are surrounded by security guards, and they don't know the people who love them. But Jesus is more than that. He has come down to us, and he actually, I mean, being God, which is much better than any kind of star who comes and goes and gets old and gets sick, you know, and they lose interest and we lose interest in them, and then some kind of scandal happens and all of a sudden they're not the people that we thought they were. But with Jesus it's different, because he's the one who created us, but he actually is interested in who you are yourself. He's interested in you when you are on your own in a room or anywhere. He's interested in you when you're filled with joy because something wonderful has happened, and he's interested in you when you're filled with sorrow because you're in some kind of despair and you don't know who to turn to. He's the kind of person who wants to be your friend and intimate with you all the time, and actually understands you better than you understand yourself. Where I could say I used to love Beyonce or Madonna or anybody, admire historical figures who made the world a better place, even saints. But with Jesus, he actually knows who you are, loves who you are, and even loves you where you are now, even if you don't think it's a good place to be. And he doesn't even force himself on you. He just waits for you patiently to just say, "Where are you, Lord?" or something, anything. It doesn't even have to be, you might not even know who you're talking to, but he's the one who has ears to hear all the movements of your heart. And he came down at Christmas. I mean, at Christmas time, God, who is so far beyond anything you can imagine, so far distant in so many ways, I mean, incomprehensible. You couldn't even begin to think or imagine what he must be like or how he is. And if you look around and see the beauty of creation and you think, well, how could God be interested in somebody like me? But yet there's a desire that he has planted in the heart of everybody to seek some kind of fulfillment. And he's the fulfillment that he wants us to have. I mean, he wants to be the answer to the holes that we all have in our souls. Not everybody knows that. And sometimes we imagine that it's in other people or any kind of fast cars or money or wealth or beauty or anything. And yet he's the only one who can reach us where we need to be reached and help us come through what we need to come through in order to be survivors, but more than survivors, actually to live and to know that we are precious in his sight, beloved by him who is God. No amount of money can buy that kind of friendship. But it's waiting for us. He's waiting for us. He would go to any lengths just to see us, to have us be with him. A few years ago, I got a Christmas card, and on it in the inside it said, Jesus is the reason for this season. And I thought it was a lovely idea. But on thinking more about it, I thought, actually, in fact, Jesus isn't the reason for the season of Christmas. It's a strange thing to imagine or to think about, but I think there's a certain sense in which it's true. You know, St. Paul in his letters said that God loved the world so much that he gave his only son. But he loved the world so much, but he created the world for you and for me to make the world has no meaning if we're not in it. The world is, as well, St. Paul said, it's groaning in one great act of giving birth. So the only way that it can do that is if there are people in it who turn their gaze towards God. Everybody hopefully will, but Jesus came at Christmas for our sake. So Christmas is sort of a time. I mean, from God's point of view, I imagine that Christmas, the reason for the season of Christmas is you. You're the reason for the season. And the invitation that God gives us at Christmas is to stop and think and just be quiet for a while and imagine what it must be like. I mean, for example, the first time, when my sister for the first time told me that she was expecting a baby, her very first child, the wonder of the creation of every human being was just almost mind-blowing. And I went into the chapel that night for adoration, and I found myself looking at my hands and being amazed at the fact that the hands that I have, unlike the hands anybody else in the world has. And there's so much going on there that I don't understand or know, but God created this hand, these two hands, and he was working on this baby who was being formed in my sister's womb, creating that baby. And my sister, who is already the mother of the child, couldn't have had any idea how it was happening, only that it was happening. But it was a baby. I mean, this was going to be a baby, her child. And she had everything to do with its creation. And on the other hand, nothing. But God is creating this baby and forming it to utter perfection as a human child. And on Christmas Day, Jesus came down from heaven. He allowed himself to be formed just that way, with a human body, a human mother who was able to hold him and just look at his body and look at his eyes and his nose and his hands and his head and just think she was the mother of this little baby who is God. And at the cross on Easter, on Good Friday, she became the mother of you as well. She accepted to be your mother. So you can imagine on Christmas Day, she sees in her child every child that God has created and given life to. And she is holding you the way she held him, loving you the way she loved her son, and desiring with every fibre of her being that you might know that you have a mother in heaven who loves you just as she loved her son, who is God, and that he created you in love, utter love. And you know, and now in the world and all through time, from the beginning of history, children have been born into the world who have not been wanted, or for all kinds of reasons, and parents have become parents out of fear or anger, through abuse, all life. We all come into the world with different stories. But fundamentally, and even if it isn't, every human life was conceived in love, and it might not have been always the parents' love, but it certainly is the love of the Father, God in heaven. And knowing that he loves you can give you tremendous courage to be much more than you could ever imagine you could be on your own. And you have a mother in heaven who holds you the way she held her son on that first Christmas morning, who loves you with the same love and desires only that you might open your heart to believing that you actually matter, and that beginning to believe is the beginning of knowing God and of letting him in, and it's the beginning of faith, and it's the beginning of the fulfillment that only God can give. I should just finish by wishing everybody a blessed and a happy Christmas, and the words of St. John in the first letter that he wrote that we have. He reminded us to think of the love that the Father has lavished on us by letting us be called God's children. And that is what we are, to just think. So I invite you this Christmas, with all the joy that Christmas brings, to think and to dare to believe that the God has lavished a tremendous amount of love on you and that you are his child. Happy Christmas.
At the end of Mass, we are told to go out and bring the gospel into our lives and witness to the gospel by everything that we say and do. It's so important that we are all out there bringing the joy of the gospel to everyone we know. And that's why I'm so pleased to endorse and offer my blessing to Shalom World TV for all that you are doing to bring good news into this world which is often sad and dark and in need of a message of hope. Thank you for what you're doing. May God bless your work always.
Shalom World, God's own channel.